got this. Yesterday.
All right, everybody, welcome. The time is now 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. This meeting is now called to order. Please stand for the pledge led by Commissioner Brown.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, can we please have a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Vashani is excused. Commissioner Austin?
Here.
Brown?
Present.
Rose?
Here.
Scheffler?
Here.
Sheaf?
Here.
Chair Stahira?
Here. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we don't have any minutes to approve for this meeting, so we will likely revisit the March 12th meeting minutes next meeting. So we'll move along to the next item on the agenda, which is the public input portion of tonight's meeting. So at this time, citizens who wish to discuss any items that are not on the agenda may speak to the commission. And just as a reminder, the commission can't discuss or vote on items that are not on the agenda, but we can use those to inform what we put on the agenda for future meetings. Do we have any public input items tonight? All right. Seeing none, we can move right along to our public hearings for the night. We have 3 public hearing items on the agenda. First up is PH1, which is an application for a conditional use permit, CUP 2025-0002. The subject property is 931 West Duarte Road with Szechuan Garden, Li Ping Lao as applicant. Excuse me if I mispronounced that. This is an application for a Type 41 state alcohol and beverage control license to serve beer and wine at an existing restaurant, Szechuan Garden. I believe we have Brenda with the staff report, but we might have an IT issue that we need to resolve first.
This one will be faster than last time.
Sit tight.
Thank you.
That's looking good. Go ahead with the staff report,
Thank you,
Brenda.
Chair. Thank you so much. And good evening to you and the rest of the commission members. So as mentioned before, our first item tonight is a request for a conditional use permit for a state alcohol beverage control license to allow the incidental sale and on-site service of beer and wine for on-site consumption at an existing sit-down restaurant called Szechuan Garden. The site is located at 931 West Duarte Road within a freestanding multi-tenant building within the Monarch Shopping Center and is zoned as neighborhood commercial. Food service will be offered throughout all hours of operation. The restaurant provides a wide range of Chinese cuisine options, including noodles and dumplings, various sides, and non-alcoholic beverages. State approval is also required for the sale and consumption of alcohol on site. This includes that the restaurant have a full-service kitchen during operating hours and certification be obtained by managers and servers through ABC's Responsible Beverage Service Training Program. Staff conducted a site visit to the restaurant and confirmed that the layout of the business reflects an operating bona fide eating establishment. The image on the upper left-hand corner displays a kitchen, and the floor plan shows a total of 13 tables and 64 chairs. One of these tables is located in a private dining room that will be kept unlocked at all times. So in addition to standard conditions, this project includes a specific condition, and that is requiring that the private dining room remain unlocked at all times, as previously mentioned, and window signs to be placed so that there is a clear and unobstructed view of the interior. And with that, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for incidental sale and service of beer and wine for on-site consumption at this location. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the staff report. Any questions from commissioners regarding the staff report? Go ahead, Commissioner
Just
Rose.
one. Is there a problem with signage there now? I thought that was an unusual thing to,
No problem with
Okay,
signage at the
just-
moment.
just a reminder.
It's a standard
Yeah.
condition that
Just a
windows
reminder
be
that we must be.
viewable from the outside.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so now this is the time and place for public input regarding PH1. We'll accept testimony in the following order. The applicant, if they wish to speak, persons in favor, persons with concerns, and then the applicant will have a chance to respond. And just some reminders, those wishing to speak, please come to the podium one at a time. Just state your name for the record. Do we have anybody wishing to speak? Do we have the applicant?
I don't believe so, no.
Got it. Okay, so no applicant. Do we have any persons wishing to speak in favor? Any persons opposed wish to speak? Then no need for a rebuttal. Any debate or dialogue, discussion, other questions from the commission? Commissioner Austin? No. Okay, I'll take a motion if there is one.
I can do that. I'll move that we approve conditional use permit CUP 2025-002 with the conditions as presented in the staff report.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Can we please get a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Austin?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Scheffler?
Yes.
Sheaf?
Yes.
Chair Stahira?
Yes. All right. No appeal language.
No, yes, this
Yes,
is a
appeal
public
language.
hearing, and just wanted to make sure the applicant and everyone in the audience knows that decisions of the Planning Commission may be appealed to the City Council if filed in writing within 10 days of tonight's decision, and an appeal fee does apply. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. That completes PH1. We will move on in the agenda to our next item, PH2, which is an application for a conditional use permit, CUP 2025-0003. The subject property for this CUP is 245 West Foothill Boulevard with Casa Colina Healthcare. Eric Rodriguez is the applicant. And it's an application for a CUP to establish a new outpatient physical therapy center within an existing commercial building. And I believe we have Brenda back for another staff report.
That's right. Thank you, Chair, and hello again. So in connection to this request, we also will be looking at landscaping and ADA accessibility that will be updated at this site for the outpatient medical use. So the site is located at 245 West Foothill Boulevard on the northwest corner of Acacia Avenue and Foothill Boulevard, and is zoned as neighborhood commercial, which requires a minor conditional use permit for medical outpatient uses. Now, the property is developed with a commercial building that was previously used as office space, but has been vacant for approximately a year. Now, as mentioned before, medical outpatient uses generally require approval of a minor conditional use permit by the Development Review Committee. However, since the subject site is adjacent to residentially zoned properties, code requires a conditional use permit be reviewed by the Planning Commission due to the site's proximity to residential zones. So Casa Colina Healthcare Center plans to open an outpatient physical rehabilitation center at the subject site, where they will offer physical, occupational, and speech pathology services. Their proposed hours of operation are from Monday through Saturday from 7 o'clock a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m., with a capacity of 9 to 12 employees and a maximum of 18 patients per hour. All services will be provided by appointment only and will not involve overnight care, emergency visits, or walk-in urgent treatments. These operations are designed to be low impact, individualized, and compatible with adjacent residential uses. Tenant improvements include a new break room, employee restroom, therapy gym, and other non-medical modifications. Now, here we see some pictures of how the site looks today. So currently, the parking lot has 37 stalls, and this includes 2 ADA stalls that are located by the drive aisles off of Foothill Boulevard and Acacia Avenue. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the parking lot by adding 2 more parking stalls and increasing the amount of ADA stalls from 2 to 8 stalls that will be all closely placed to the building. A new path of travel will also be placed for pedestrians to access from the sidewalk adjacent to Foothill Boulevard, and a new light post will also be placed in the center of the lot, illuminating the ADA parking stalls. New landscaping will be provided. This includes 5 Brisbane box trees and drought-tolerant shrubs that will help with screening from the residential units that are located to the north. Currently, the site has 7 palm trees located at the north and south end corners of the site that will be removed and replaced with new shrubs. The new landscaping, including the Brisbane box trees and shrubs, will provide added screening from the adjacent residential properties to the north. Now, conditions have been placed to include that all physical therapy activities and equipment be conducted entirely within the enclosed building. Hours of operation shall be limited to Monday through Saturday from 7 o'clock a.m. to 6 o'clock p.m., and any changes proposed to these hours in the future shall be approved by the DRC. Aside from this, the solid block wall along the north property line shall be maintained as a buffer between the commercial use and the neighboring residents. And with that, staff is recommending approval to the Planning Commission. I am available for questions, and I believe our applicant is here in the audience tonight, too. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the report. Questions from commissioners? Okay, I have a couple. Just on the landscaping, if you could flip back there, the tree plan, is there are some mature trees that are on the site. Are those going to be preserved, or are those going to be removed and replaced?
That's a good-
Besides the palms, I know you mentioned the palms are going to be removed.
There are some trees that are being retained. If you give me just a moment.
Is it those 3 green circles on the bottom?
Good question. So the trees to remain are the Cocos plumosa. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I misspoke. The eucalyptus trees that are located to the south. So yes, the 3 circles and green off of West Foothill Boulevard. So those trees will remain.
Gotcha. Thank you. I know one of the conditions talks about a tree retention plan. Are those part of the tree retention plan?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Austin.
I do have a question, apologize. Regarding the plant selection there, I see some of them, specifically the purple fountain grass is not necessarily a native plant, it's a drought resistant. And since we just went through a horrific fire season, these are contributors to spread of wildfire. If it's possible to work with the applicant on putting some appropriate plant life in there that's more native than drought tolerant?
Yes, we can work with the applicant on that.
Do we have any other questions? All right, seeing no other questions right now, we can move on to the public input portion of this hearing. So a reminder, if the applicant would like to speak, we'll take their testimony, then persons in favor, persons opposed, and a chance for the applicant to respond. Again, just a reminder, if you'd like to speak, please step up to the podium and state your name for the record. Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, Council. My name is Eric Rodriguez. I'm with Day Architects. I'm here with most of the important people from Casa Colina. I just wanted to introduce ourselves and let you know that we are here available from the architectural design perspective and, of course, from the facilities perspective to answer any potential questions from yourselves or anyone in the public gallery here. So thank you.
Thank you. Any persons in favor wish to speak? All right, seeing none. Any opposed? All right, no need to rebut. Any questions or discussion from the commission? Sorry, let me close the public testimony portion of the hearing and move on to commissioner questions. Just maybe a question from me on this. Is Casa Colina an established business elsewhere and moving, or is it a new business?
It is an established business. They have 2 centers, one in Pomona and one in the city of Azusa. They operate a little bit differently. Those centers each have, I believe, they each have hospitals, and they operate on a 24-hour basis, where this operation will be different, where it's just going to be outpatient medical services.
Thank you. And just to clarify, there's no building expansion that's part of this
Correct.
particular CUP
Correct.
or plan, correct?
It's all interior, and it's existing.
Any other questions? All right, if there's no other discussion, then I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve CUP 2025-0003 with conditions.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Commissioners Rose and Scheffler. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Austin?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Scheffler?
Yes.
Sheaf?
Yes.
Chair Stahira?
Yes. All right, appeal language, please.
All right, motion passes. And yes, decisions of the Planning Commission may be appealed to the City Council if filed in writing to the city clerk within 10 days of tonight's decision, and an appeal fee does apply. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Moving right along in the agenda, we have one more public hearing item tonight, PH3. It's a proposed ordinance number 2025-03, an associated Planning Commission resolution number 2025-0001 from the City of Monrovia. And this ordinance recommends amendments to add inclusionary housing requirements to the Monrovia Municipal Code. I think we have Sherry up with the staff report.
Yes,
Go
good
ahead.
evening, Chair and members of the commission. Thank you very much. We're here tonight to present to the commission a proposed inclusionary housing ordinance. This ordinance has been in the making for several months now. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of what this ordinance contains and what's proposing, I just wanted to do some background and a little discussion on why we're here. So as the Planning Commission may recall, the city the city adopted a six-cycle housing element in 2022. And that covers the years between 21 and through 2029. And the purpose of this plan is to provide a plan for current and future needs of all segments of the city's population. And it also includes goals and actions regarding housing. Now, the primary purpose of the plan is to demonstrate that the city has sufficient housing capacity to meet its regional housing needs assessment. Part of the plan includes a housing plan, which is long-term goals, short-term actions that are both land use tools, different parameters of code revisions, process changes to facilitate that housing production. One of those programs, Program 1.7, requires the city to study explore the idea of adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance. Now, the city doesn't have to adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance. The city council, though, about 6 months ago, started this intensive study, and there's been several study sessions and surveys. And I think what came out of that is the idea for affordable housing was very favorable, and that is why we're here tonight. So before we get into the ordinance, it's important to understand what is an inclusionary housing ordinance. And so what the inclusionary housing ordinance does in a nutshell is it requires a percentage of a market rate development that's being proposed to include a percentage of their total units as affordable units. And it's one tool in our toolbox. It's not the only tool, but it's one tool to help a city or local jurisdiction meet their RHNA requirement. As the commission is aware, the city has already fulfilled a lot of different actions to try to meet this requirement. The inclusionary housing is the most direct implementable tool to get the housing. And these types of ordinances apply to developments of a certain size. They apply to either rental or for sale or both, and they're typically designed to be city-centric. And that's because every city is unique, every city has different market conditions, every city has different priorities. So in this slide, we try to show and illustrate what inclusionary housing looks like. So we have one development that's all in orange, and this is a development without inclusionary housing. And then the development to the right of that is a development with inclusionary housing. Now, the shape and form look very identical, and it shows that the affordable housing units are spread throughout the entire building. They're not located in a separate building or in a corner of the building. And for the most part, the size are very comparable to the other units. And so what is affordable housing? What does this mean? So what I put on this slide is each county has their own established affordable rental rates. And this table shows the affordable rental rates that have been established for the year 2024 in LA County. And the rates are based on the size of the units. So, for example, a household of two that qualifies for low income would have a maximum rental rate of $1,571. And that rental rate is, to qualify for that rental rate, you have to meet the moderate income category that's based on LA County's average median income. And typically, that rental rate is not more than, an affordable housing cost for any individual shouldn't be more than, you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your gross income on housing, and it should also include the cost of utilities, et cetera. Now, for the city of Monrovia, this chart represents our regional housing needs assessment. The commission has seen this before. The first column, where it says RHNA by income level, that's the city's target goal that we're looking to accommodate by the year 2029. You can see we have a total of 1,670 units, and those units are spread out by various income levels between very low and above moderate. And then the next three columns show our attainment of meeting those, that goal, and it's based on units approved and units entitled over a year-to-year span. This chart actually incorporates the units that have been permitted, issued, and constructed between the years 2021 through 2024. So as I mentioned before, the City Council began studying the idea of adopting inclusionary housing ordinance back in September of 2024. There's been 3 study sessions, and the proposed ordinance that's before the commission tonight was worked on we had a comprehensive approach and team that put this together. The city staff worked alongside Sagecrest Planning and Environmental, and they're here this evening. We also have Kaiser Marston, who facilitated the fiscal analysis. And through this intensive discussion, the council and staff, we directed several studies and surveys to get input. Some of the studies include a community input study. We also did a survey of San Gabriel Valley cities to try to understand what best practices are throughout our region and what has worked and what has not worked. The council was also very interested in getting developer input. And so taking all that information together with respect to the surveys and the studies and the discussion, the staff working closely with our team of consultants really kind of identified very critical implementing principles that kind of drove the framework for this proposed ordinance. The first one is the goal was to make an ordinance that was Monrovia-centric, and that was really to satisfy the needs and market conditions of Monrovia. As I mentioned before, every city has different market needs and conditions. They have different zoning laws that influence the cost of housing. Another goal was to provide an ordinance that was flexible and offered a range of alternative means of compliance to the ordinance. Through our developer input surveys, it was highlighted that because there is a cost of providing affordable housing, a lot of the developers liked the idea of tying the threshold of inclusionary housing to state laws for easy to implement, and also they are incentivized by the density bonus waivers and concession programs. Part of the framework also included considering the city's community priorities, specifically the general plan land use vision and how it relates to neighborhood compatibility and the preservation of historic resources. And then the goal was to ultimately produce affordable housing with minimal impact on housing production and prices. And then lastly, the goal was also to create an ordinance that's legally compliant with state law and court rulings. So the key piece of putting together this inclusionary housing ordinance was our fiscal analysis. And later this evening, if you have questions, we have our specialist, the president of KMA, who's here, Ms. Kathy Head. She's done probably a quarter of inclusionary housing ordinances in California, if it's a good ratio. It's close. It's close. And so a little bit about this inclusionary, a fiscal analysis. It's really essential to determine it was first essential to determine here in the city of Monrovia what the affordability gap is associated with the different types of development that Monrovia is experiencing. And so when we say affordability gap, essentially that's the difference between the market rate value and the cost of producing and that affordable housing unit. And the affordability gap, as you can imagine, changes in every city based on rental rates, right? Monrovia has higher rental rates than some other cities in the San Gabriel Valley, and other cities in the San Gabriel Valley have higher rates than ours, so that affordability gap varies. This fiscal analysis also, after identifying the affordability gap, it took and looked at different types of prototypical projects to understand how each project type changed and was affected by an affordable inclusionary housing requirement. So the fiscal analysis, it actually recommends a project size in which to trigger the ordinance. It sets recommendations for income and affordability standards that can be supported, as well as an in lieu fee, which is an alternative means of compliance, that is the perfect balance. And when we're trying to understand what is the perfect balance, how do you get to a sweet spot without tipping or stifling development, right? The one thing that I've learned is that a successful ordinance is one that will impact developers and create affordable housing units, however, not as much as desired. And I think Ms. Kathy Head will tell you, we know we're in a good shape when we have both all housing advocates upset with us and we have all developers upset with us. So now I want to just kind of walk you through the contents of the ordinance. The crux of it is the applicability, the affordable housing requirements, the exemptions, and the alternative means of compliance. Applicability. So the ordinance is recommending that the inclusionary housing requirement apply to new housing projects with 5 or more units in first a target area. And these target areas have been defined as Station Square, Transit Village, West Huntington Drive Corridor, and South Myrtle Avenue, and that's the Old Town Extension District. Now, the first reason why the city staff looked at these areas is because these are the areas already where the city is experiencing its housing growth. These were areas that were planned over 30 years ago that are close to transit to support high-density, walkable communities, close to jobs and services. These areas also make up predominantly all of the city's RHNA housing opportunity sites. So we capture our RHNA requirements in these areas. Another reason why these areas were recommended is they also protect against unintended consequences resulting from the use of the density bonus. And to explain that is when a project has an affordable housing requirement that's set at 5 units or 5 or more units, that's the point at which the density bonus now kicks in and offers a density increase as an incentive. And it also allows developers to start taking advantage of waivers of and concessions of development standards. So if you had a project and you needed a reduced setback or increased height, through the use of the density bonus, you can ask, a developer could ask for that, and the city has to provide that if there's an offer of affordable housing that meets the state density bonus thresholds. And then another key reason is for these targeted areas is that these areas really allow housing development to capitalize on the city's existing infrastructure and proximity to transit. Okay, outside of these target areas, we do have another net to try to capture more affordable housing. And that first net is the ordinance recommends that not only does it capture this existing housing cycles RENA requirement or housing opportunity sites inventory, but it also automatically captures any future sites. So when we start, we're already halfway in through this cycle. So when staff starts looking at where we're going to be capturing future units to meet our future RENA, the ordinance will already capture those sites. Staff has also incorporated a provision that any project that's outside of those areas that is proposing a general plan amendment for more density or a zone change for a residential use, land use, that the site be automatically triggered into the inclusionary housing requirement. And then last but not least, there are several state laws that have that now facilitate by right residential housing on non-residential sites. So we've threw in another kind of net to capture any by right housing project that would occur on a non-residential site. Okay, and so now if a project hits the threshold and is required to incorporate affordable housing, these are the thresholds. So if the project is an ownership project, such as like a condominium project, the recommended requirement of affordability based on the fiscal analysis that was conducted is 10% at moderate income. For rental, we have 3 different tiers. The first tier is if you're doing 20 or fewer units, it's 6% at low income. From 21 to 49 units, it recommends 10% low income. And then anything over 50 units, we have a recommended 15% low income. Now, you may be thinking or asking to yourself, why are we going after low income units? Why are we going after moderate income units? And the reason is that those are the 2 areas in our RENA where we really need some heavy lifting. There are already a lot of state and federal funding incentives to large developers to secure very low income. And so the moderate and the low, it's like this is another way for us to try to attract these units. As for exemptions, this ordinance would not apply to the addition of ADUs. ADUs cannot be deed restricted. SB 9 units, these are units that are proposed in, or it could be a subdivision in a single-family home. The maximum number of units in an SB 9 development is 4, so that already would not be applicable. Emergency shelters, again, this is temporary housing, not permanent housing. Assisted living facilities are not your traditional housing development, and transitional supportive housing already have a lot of affordability and the different types of housing. So an in lieu fee, so the state, the laws regarding inclusionary housing basically say that the program has to also include an alternative means of compliance. One of the first alternative means of compliance that's most frequently used is the in lieu fee. It's very popular amongst all the cities who have inclusionary housing ordinances, and the developers also like it. And what, it doesn't have to be applicable to all types of projects. And so what Monrovia's ordinance is recommending, it's that it be allowed for all ownership projects. And by doing that, the ownership, there's no, when the home sale, if there was a home that sells, there's no loss of return on your investment. It's just easier and cleaner to have it, to pay the in lieu fee. For rental projects between 5 and 20 units or less, those would all have the option to do the in lieu fee. And those are smaller projects that, based on their size, it doesn't really make sense. It helps to reduce the burden on the smaller scaled size projects. And our in lieu fee program also is recommending that the calculation be based on a per square foot. And that fee, as you can see, is different between an ownership and a rental unit. Okay, so we're getting close to the end. I just wanted to give you some sample calculations of how this in lieu fee would apply. So here's the first scenario. You have a vacant property in which a developer proposes to build a 5-unit apartment complex. Each unit's about 1,500 square feet. So because this is an apartment complex, we're using the $24.50 per square foot. So 5 units times the total square footage times the per square foot fee, you get $183,750. And that would be the inclusionary in lieu fee for this particular project. Scenario number 2, we have an existing property that's developed with 3 existing units. And the developer wants to add 2 new units. So a new housing development is now at the 5, hits the 5. But the per square foot fee is actually based on the net new number of units. So we have 2 units times the size of the unit times the fee. In this scenario, the fee would be $73,500. And last but not least, scenario 3, the developer proposes to build a new 50-unit townhouse development. These are for sale units. And you can see for this particular scenario, the total fee is a little over $2 million. With respect to other types of alternative means of compliance, this ordinance proposes, allows developers to build those units off-site, but within the city of Monrovia. It also has a provision that would allow for the conversion of existing market rate units. Now, it's important to note that the city may or may not get credit with the conversion of market rate units. HCD has several questions and analysis that we would have to go through to see if we would qualify or not. And it's not a black and white methodology. But nevertheless, converting a unit, an existing unit, to an affordable unit is still a gain for the city. So right now, the city has already finalized the ordinance that's being presented to the commission. We're eager to receive your feedback. This is the Planning Commission's public hearing process, and the commission would be making an advisory recommendation to the city council. After tonight, if this goes through, the city council would meet in May, at the end of May, May 20th. So with that, I conclude the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sherry. A lot went into that. Okay, so questions from the commission. Commissioner Rose.
2 questions. Is there anything in this ordinance, I couldn't find anything, that speaks to rates going up on these affordable units? Because we can start out affordable and not end up affordable. So I don't know that that's legal, that we can put any restrictions on, that these homes remain affordable.
Yes, so with state law, what would happen is if a housing developer was required to produce the affordable housing unit, there would be an agreement that's recorded. It's going to be deed restricted against the property, and there'll be a monitoring program, and that requires the affordability for rental for 55 years.
So
That's
for rentals?
correct. For ownership, it's for 45 years.
Okay, so, so these new things that are going up, those will be protected?
We could only protect the ones that are deed restricted through the ordinance.
Right, not I know the regular ones. they
The
can-
market rate.
Yeah,
or
market
the
rate, they can
market
do
rate.
whatever.
Correct.
Got it, okay, because that's my concern. What's the use of having it affordable if it's not going to remain affordable? The other thing, about these in lieu fees, my question is, if a developer, and maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but if a developer chooses to pay the in lieu fees, am I understanding that they can pay in lieu fees instead of creating affordable units?
Yes, but maybe. So the way that the in lieu fee program has been designed, the smaller scale
Right,
projects
get that, yeah.
can pay the in lieu fee. Anything greater than, I think it was 20, has to build it into the project. Has to create the affordable unit and maintain it for 55 years within their project.
So
Okay.
there's no in lieu fee option.
So there's
for-
no in lieu, that's where I
For
guess I
over
didn't
20,
understand
for over
that.
20 units.
Okay, so they can't opt to pay the in lieu fee and get all the benefits of building an 8-story building and not having affordable
Correct.
units?
Correct.
Okay, that was my big concern. I want to see those units put in there if they're going to get the benefits. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Chief.
Yes, one question regarding in lieu fees. Who do those fees get paid to, and is it all up front?
Well, those fees would be taken in through the city, and we don't, so we haven't established our implementation policy program yet. Most fees are paid by C of O, so once the building's built, the developer has to pay those fees in prior to C of O. We can have Kathy Head weigh in on that if she wants to. Are they normally at C of O? But then we would manage those through a housing trust fund here at the city.
So it varies from city to city. Hi, I'm Kathy Head, I'm president of Kaiser Marston. It varies from city to city. Sometimes you see it at the end before a CFO is issued. Sometimes you see it split up between at the beginning of construction or the middle of construction CFO. Typically, you'll see a phased project where it'll be paid by phases, but it's fine any of those ways. That's your policy decision.
Most of our fees are all paid at C of O.
So that fee goes into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that money is intended to be used by the city to increase affordable housing supply. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So then, what is that going to be done in a timely manner, or does that money
So
sit there for an
there's-
extended period of time?
Yeah, so
potentially?
there's there's yearly reporting requirements. There would be yearly reporting requirements on what our fees that we're charging on. And at the end of 5 years, if we haven't used the money, we need to also report that and show that we are going to use it. It's not just constructing a unit. The city has a lot of options to take that money. It could be a first-time homebuyer program. It could be put into a housing rehab program. It could allow to facilitate the conversion of existing market rate units to affordable units. So I see a lot of good potential to use it. It may take some time to accumulate it.
How does that plan, you said the plan is not finalized. How does that, what's the path to
Yeah.
that plan coming into existence? Is that something the city council weighs in on?
Yes, so the fees that are shown here in this proposed ordinance would have to be adopted by council by resolution. And then either with that resolution or separately, trailing a little behind it, we would bring back an implementation plan that would identify the nuts and bolts of managing the program.
Commissioner Brown?
I have a couple questions. Do we have an estimate on how much we think we're going to get from these in lieu fees?
Let's bring up our specialist.
Hello again. I'm still Kathy Head. My guess is, now, looking at it, your apartment projects are likely not to be small. They're just, I expect there to be very few small apartment projects. So there should be no in lieu fees generated, or very little, minimal in lieu fees. Ownership housing and something that, I mean, there was a lot covered in the presentation, but one thing that's important is the reason we're suggesting in lieu fees be allowed to be paid for all ownership projects is because the affordability gaps are so big between your market rate prices and the affordable price, that if you develop them, one, you can't develop that many units, and two, you have lottery winners, when you get these units. So to take those fees and use them towards all the projects that were just mentioned is a more efficient way to go. That's a long way of saying I have no idea how much the fees will be. I don't expect that you'll see, most of your ownership housing will be infill, small infill. So it'll take some time to generate a significant amount of capital, and that's why programs like first-time home buyer or rehab, et cetera, are probably your best use of the fees.
Okay.
And I was just in Arcadia last week, and I said exactly the same thing.
Can we talk a little bit more about that? Just maybe an example, if we have, say, a small, a bungalow court of 5 units, it's an ownership project, so it would be eligible for the in lieu fee. So if the developer wanted to sell those units at market rate, they could develop that 5-unit bungalow court hypothetically, and then just pay the in lieu fee and then sell them at market rate. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's how that works?
that's
Okay.
how that works.
Okay. Yeah, go Commissioner Brown.
So another alternative is that developers, instead of the in lieu fee, can develop affordable housing on an alternate site.
Correct.
What are our parameters on that so that we don't unintentionally create areas now that are all, instead of it being nicely dispersed the way you showed it on that model, we're creating areas with high concentration. So what are we doing about that?
So there are parameters in the ordinance that basically a developer can't come in and say, oh, I want to build my project, don't worry, I'm going to put my affordable housing units on this lot over here. The first thing is we don't have a lot of this lot, we don't have a lot of extra land in Monrovia. We put that alternative means of compliance in there in case maybe the city has a site where we want to incorporate affordable housing. The purpose, though, is that they would have to have a plan and a permit done to build before they could even do their project. There would be a review process in place to make sure it made sense.
Commissioner Austin?
Sure. This might go to Kathy, but I'll direct it back to you, Sherry. The per square foot fee, is that a permanent thing, or is that adjusted due to inflation, or like a county government coming up and saying this is what affordable is now?
So we are going to be looking at that fee on an annual basis for adjustment purposes.
Okay.
I think this ordinance is one that would be scrutinized every year and monitored every year, especially not just the fees, but to make sure it's working, right? And evaluating areas where maybe we want to expand towards or make other adjustments on density to gain more affordable housing.
So back to you again, Sherry. The level of comfort about the thresholds, because I know that I listened to Kathy's 3 presentations of the city council, seems to be quite equipped to make these judgments, because what was the thing? 15% of 0 is still 0.
I've
So
been saying that all day.
I listened
That's
to
what my
that.
license
So the
plate
thresholds at a good rate.
Just to say, that is a BIA comment that I stole, just to attribute it appropriately.
So our
Yes.
thresholds are a comfortable level that
Yes.
we can see success.
Yes, and I think the other thing that we didn't mention, but Kathy has trained me now in the last 6 months, is that there are significant laws in making sure the ordinance is not confiscatory and it doesn't take away the fair and reasonable return on investment that a developer has. And there's been state law, there's been court cases that say that, but there's no recipe that tells us how to make sure that it's not confiscatory or it's going to deprive a developer, right? That's the crux of this fiscal analysis. And I think Kaiser Marston's analysis is very conservative and it's a very balanced approach. And so staff recommends it.
One last question, and this is to Kathy. The study was started 2 years ago. Is it still germane or applicable in the 2025 financial terms?
We're closing in on it being stale. I would suggest adopting soon.
Okay.
One of the things you said, Sherry, is we would scrutinize this ordinance and see whether or not it's successful, likely on an annual basis. How do we figure out if it's successful or not? And on the flip side, how do we figure out if it's not being successful, and what does success mean?
Well, I think your planning team has dialogue every single day with developers across the counter. And we also will be evaluating, are we capturing, is it deterring development when people come in to the counter and they say, I want to do a project? I don't think this day and age that a large developer is going to walk away because of what's being proposed. Are we seeing areas of the city where maybe we should have thought about expanding the inclusionary housing ordinance? Every year we do an annual general plan report. It's a housing progress report to the state, and we will be doing a review also within that process. We'll hopefully see the zeros turn into numbers, real whole numbers.
Go ahead,
One
Commissioner
last,
Austin.
one last thing, hopefully. Regarding the affordability index, that's calculated annually by LA County.
Yes.
So that would adjust those
Correct.
up or down on those rates going
Correct.
forward.
And some new numbers will be coming out very shortly.
So that would go up and down.
Correct.
Commissioner Sheaf.
Are there examples where this ordinance has been successful in Southern California? And are they using the same type of numbers that we're looking at?
You know what? I'm going to have Ms. Kathy Head respond to that.
Thank you.
Or Mr. David Blumenthal from Sage Crest, who conducted our San Gabriel Valley City Survey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. David Blumenthal, Principal with Sagecrest Planning and Environmental. The short answer is yes, there's a lot of cities out there that have done very successful inclusionary ordinances. There are some cities out there that have done not successful ordinances and have put them on hold since they've implemented it. The surveys we show have shown pretty much most of the ordinances are very successful. Now, the numbers need to be tailored per city because the numbers that Kathy puts together are actually based on the city's actual income levels and the city's sales rates and property values that go in, and that can vary between you and Arcadia and Bradbury are all different numbers, and that's why it's critical that we had Kathy prepare that fiscal analysis to make sure this is tailored towards Monrovia.
So just expanding on that, I think one of the comments in the staff report talked about some of the other ordinances in the San Gabriel Valley, and how much affordable housing was actually built versus how much the in lieu fee was utilized. I think the comment was like South Pasadena has built a lot of affordable housing. Was it Alhambra tends to just have developers use the in lieu fee? What drives those things? Is it just different rates, different provisions in their ordinance? Tell us some more about that.
I think a little bit of that and a little bit of the local development climate. I think Pasadena is going to develop a lot of affordable housing, whether or not they have an affordable and inclusionary ordinance. They just tend to build. They're just one of those cities that the way the city was developed is conducive to a lot of high-density projects and a lot of affordable units. So you see that, and then you see the opposite again, where some cities where it's the ordinance that drives those, because otherwise they wouldn't see anything at all.
So, yeah, given all of that experience from the other cities that have come before us in the San Gabriel Valley, how do you expect to see this ordinance utilized and instantiated in Monrovia? Like, what do you think will happen?
Putting my bringing out the crystal ball
Putting
on
your-
that one, put
yeah.
the magic cap on.
Yep.
I think this has been very tailored to meet the city's needs. There has been a lot more research than what we typically do for these types of ordinances. Getting community input, getting developer input. That's very rare for these ordinances. So I think we're hopefully found a very sweet spot for you. As Kat said, there's a way for us to really predict the number of units you're going to see out of this. But we feel that this is a very well-written ordinance that will be successful for you. And taking a look at it on an annual basis will definitely help you tailor it a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also fair to say that a lot of cities are at the same place where we are right now. Some of the cities in the study had just approved or adopted their ordinance. So I think time will tell. All the planning directors work together closely with the COG, and we talk and we share stories and ideas. We will continue to have a discussion of what's not only working and not working here in Monrovia, but we always keep our ears on like, what else can we do if it's not working or good? You know what? Monrovia actually knows how to do this.
I just wanted to say a couple of things because I'm chatty, and because I worked on a lot of these ordinances in the surrounding communities. Your ordinance, one of the reasons I think it will work is because when you did your housing element, you created the areas in which you expected the housing to be built, and the train obviously has a significant influence on the apartment development. And I think clearly that is where apartment development will be focused, with a little bit coming into town, but mainly by the train. And so that's, I think, what guides yours. I just finished Arcadia, and Arcadia, what guides theirs is in their housing element, they rezoned. And when they rezoned for the downtown mixed-use area primarily to provide additional density, and in return then for that rezoning said, oh, and by the way, we're going to make you do affordable housing. And so there's that. Pasadena, which I worked on in 2001, and then they actually redid it in the early 20s, not with me. What they experienced, as David said, is a lot of density bonus projects. And so those were going to provide affordable housing one way or the other. And so that's part of the reason they changed their ordinance, was to add another increment of affordability, because they weren't really getting anything from their inclusionary ordinance that they weren't getting from density bonus. And then Pomona, which I finished probably a couple years ago now, that one is actually seeing more ownership development, subdivision type development, and is going to be generating a fair amount of in lieu fees. Oh, and South Pasadena is just getting going too. So anyway, that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. One more, following my hypothetical bungalow court example. If we have that 5-unit bungalow court that gets built, but the in lieu fee is not paid, so those are affordable units, ownership units, and then someone wants to sell one of those later. It's deed restricted at that point. They can only sell it for a certain value. What happens there? And part of this is getting at the return on investment typically that you see in property ownership in this area.
Right, and this is another reason that I suggest in lieu fee for ownership housing, because if you allow, like the density bonus, which some developers are starting to use for ownership, it didn't used to be as common. is the way that statute is written, on the first sale, it goes to market. And then the city gets repaid the original affordability gap plus an equity share. But then what happens is you've got the density, but no longer the affordable unit. So in my opinion, my professional opinion, for a density bonus project, and then adding inclusionary into it, which gives you more authority than the density bonus, is if you then impose the long-term affordability restriction, then you keep it in the inventory for a long time. But now your homeowners who own it aren't really getting any significant equity appreciation from owning the home. And then, so that also over a long term creates a disincentive to keep the unit up.
Right.
And that's why and then given the large affordability gap, which I already mentioned, I just say take the Inlufi and use it for rental.
Yeah, so you're saying that my example is basically a unicorn. You're not going to see that.
I'd be very surprised unless somebody's selling it to their sister.
Okay. Okay. More questions? I have more. Just, oh, here. There you go. Just one on the specific assisted living facilities were exempt. Did we consider any other types of, like I saw some definitions about like rehab facilities or retirement communities or anything like that? What went into the decision to limit the exemption to assisted living facilities rather than, a wider swath?
I mean, the ordinance is really focusing on your traditional housing units. Assisted living, for example, is, it's end-of-life housing or close to end-of-life housing, and there's medical components to it. It's not your traditional housing.
So like a 55-plus community would be subject
could be.
to this.
Yes.
Was there any consideration in exempting those? for
No,
instance?
they also get benefit from the density bonus as well. Senior housing does.
Oh, yeah. You reminded me of my other line of questioning on density bonus. So currently, we don't have a density bonus ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
What's
But
the plan?
So shortly, we wanted to get this moving and grooving on the inclusionary housing. Our team has already been working on a density bonus. We just needed a little bit more time before we did liftoff. The state's law is already in place, so we would still be, we're still following the state standards even without our own ordinance.
Right. Okay. Other questions? All right. So this is a public hearing. Now that we've momentarily exhausted our fountain of questions, we can move on to the public input portion of this hearing. So again, just a reminder, if you have public input, please step up to the podium and state your name. We will take persons in favor and persons opposed, and then we'll have a chance for the city staff to respond. So do we have anybody wishing to speak in favor of the inclusionary housing ordinance and associated planning commission resolution? Go ahead, please approach the podium and just tell us your name and go ahead.
City Council, ladies and gentlemen, my name is short is Dr. K. My last name is Karamenugian, it's very long. I own the property on Myrtle and Maple. It's approximately 100,000 square footage. And I would like to know what's the input for density and affordable. As Sherry mentioned, the density has not been decided yet. I would like to know on this property, how is it mixed use? Can they do mixed use on that property? And height, that's important also. And of course, affordable housing is going to be bonus as many as number of units is going to be. Usually, I build it in Glendale, there on San Fernando corridor. It was 150 units per acre. Of course, there was 15% of affordable housing there. I don't know how it's going to be here because my property in your plans, and I'm interested to know in the future more, and I don't know with whom I'm going to work, planner or anything. I would like to bring my architect and see.
Okay, I think we might be able to get a couple answers for some of the questions that you
There's
asked.
another issue here. I own all the block from the Myrtle to Ivy except northeast corner, which is 8,000 square footage. And I am after it about 5 years. They are not interested to sell the property. Even I paid them more than market value. Is that going to stop me to do my project? And I would like to say why, if they don't want to sell it. I can't force them. I don't know if city can involve. That's, I am asking. But I don't want to stop the project because you would like me to do the project.
Okay, is that the completion of your?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comments. I think we can answer a couple of those things, and I believe some of them are germane to the public hearing tonight, and some of them may be best dealt with directly with the city staff offline. But let's go through and collect other public testimony, and then we'll gather the questions up and try to respond to them at the end. All right, any other persons in favor? This is what.
Good evening,
Please.
Commission. My name is Tom Scahill. I own the property adjacent across the street from Dr. K. I guess I am in favor of the project. However, I do have a question as it relates to, is there any provision within the ordinance to either allow or prohibit a developer from expanding and using an EIFD or the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District to complete a project within this area? That would be it. Now that I've served up that fastball. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh. Any other persons wishing to speak in favor? All right, persons opposed? Go ahead, please come up to the podium and state your name and direct your testimony to me, and we'll go from there.
Hello, my name's Janelle Douglas, and I actually live in the epicenter of where all these buildings are going up. And I've owned my property. I live in a condo on Genoa, and I've owned that property for about 18 years. And since I've been on that street, the crime rates have increased. My fiance just had his tailgate stolen. There's all kinds of stuff going on in that street. A bunch of homeless people are walking around that street. So my concern is these apartment complexes that are going up all around me and engulfing me. I thought I saw numbers a few slides back. By 2029, there was going to be 519 units that Monrovia had to come up with. Did I read that right? There's between now and 2029, the number jumped significantly.
Yeah, I can
It was
clarify
one of the
that
first slides.
it's a regional housing needs assessment. It's what the state says we should be able to accommodate within the
Yes.
city in that period of the housing, applicability of the housing element.
So my question is, where are those people going to go? And are they going to go in the apartments around my condo? That's my question. If that's the only area that the city is building, that's my concern. Because I'm already contending with a lot on my street. And I have one more question. How do you define extremely low income?
I think that was on the table. Very low.
A very low income. So what types of people are very low income?
Yeah, I think we saw it's all income-based, and it was on the table from earlier in the presentation. Maybe we can just bring that up.
Would those be people that are currently homeless now? Not necessarily, okay. Sure.
Okay, these are the rental rates, but, so basically, the average median income from LA County is $98,200. And to qualify for very low, it's 50, I think is that 50% of the area median income?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another slide that I can bring up maybe in a little bit later that shows the whole,
Yeah.
the income.
Yeah, let's
Okay, give me a chance and we'll
pull
bring that up.
It's in the staff report. We can bring it up.
Yep.
And then what was the number by 2029 that the city had to house? Because it jumped significantly.
That was the RENA. We can bring up the RENA table as well.
Oh, okay.
I think, Aaron, it might be a good idea for Sherry or city staff to explain how that arena numbers work.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they're not necessarily at end product, there's a goal.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay,
Those are my questions.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've captured those. We can show some of those tables and talk about a couple of these topics in our dialogue going forward. Okay,
Would you like me to comment now, or should we wait? It's up to you.
let's just see if there's anyone else opposed before we delve into answering some of these questions or discussing some of these topics. All right, I don't see anyone else. So yeah, this is the income levels. Yes, can you
We have
please?
one more gentleman.
Oh, we have another person opposed. Please state your name.
My name is Paul Grobart. And a couple of questions I have is, one, you're talking about putting housing right on the corner of Primrose and Maple. Okay, I have a building right diagonally across them, but you don't want automotive shops in their housing. So how's that going to affect me if you put in that? You put in housing, and I have a building I lease out that's an auto shop. I used to run the auto shop at one time, and yet the city's been against that for quite a while because of noise restrictions or seeing cars being worked on. So how's that going to affect me if they or my tenant, if they put those in there? And then if they do housing right up there to the Primrose, are you going to go across the street later and do those houses and do mine, which is near Pep Boys, which a lot of Pep Boys is empty?
Okay, is that the conclusion of your comments?
Yeah.
I don't think we can comment on specific projects or specific properties necessarily.
But you
in
don't
this.
want, you don't want automotive near housing, and yet you're proposing putting automotive near housing. I mean, housing near automotive. You're proposing doing that, which the city's been against. They've had problems with some auto shops. They're saying residents complain, residential places complain. They don't want to see the cars being worked on. They don't want noise, everything. And yet you're proposing to do that to a property that I have. So why would you propose something when the city's been against it?
I think we can capture your concerns as a matter of public record.
And are you likely to move on further, to go further west and then push me out?
I think we can also talk about, revisit the applicable areas that we're talking about for this particular
Another
ordinance.
question is, what if somebody doesn't want to sell their property? What if you get developers buying up and one guy, somebody says, no, I'm not selling? Can we stay there?
I think we've captured a couple general questions here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. All right. Sherry, if you want to
Yes.
start. Oh, we have another person. Oh, yes, please. Go ahead.
Hi. I own the property at 1550 South Myrtle Avenue, which is Pomona and South Myrtle. And they put the stop sign there, the signal there a while back because of the accidents. And my when I came to council meeting before the large unit was built next to the Chevron station, which is still under construction, I came to the city council meeting and I asked them, I said, do you realize that when you come off the 210 freeway at Myrtle, you come off and you're at the lane to turn left, let's say. But people who live in those units have to scoot all the way over to the signal to turn right to get to their units. And I said, is there any plan to revise the off-ramp at Myrtle and the 210 freeway? Because the traffic is horrific. I'm out there every day, and I get off the freeway at Myrtle, and it's just hard to deal with the traffic. And I know that the construction is going on at that building, so a lot of that's blocked off to through traffic right now. But once it's opened up, you've got the through traffic coming on and the people getting off at the 210 freeway at Myrtle. It's horrific. And I can imagine if you're going to be putting more housing in at this 210 south to Duarte, and there's residential in there, if you're going to put 5-story buildings, 7-story buildings, where are all those people going to park? Can the infrastructure of the schools, first responders, can they handle all the influx of new people coming in? And the traffic on Myrtle and the 210 is horrible, so.
Thank you for your questions and comments. All right, another person opposed? Please state your name.
Kevin Lay, neither opposed or in favor. Just a question on the slides that were presented. The third example, you mentioned 20 units or less that would be required for the in lieu fee. But did I see it mention 50 units that you offered that calculation for? Some close to $2 million in fees? That's one question. And then is the density bonus as well as the in lieu fee the developer's tools, as you mentioned, one or the other, or can you do both?
Were you able to capture that question?
I'm not sure I understood the first part of it. If you don't, I
I
don't,
think it was a clarification on the applicability of the in lieu fee.
okay.
You offered 3 scenarios. The third scenario.
Okay, so that slide was actually, you're right, an Luffy wouldn't, that's a good catch. So Luffy would not qualify there. I think this scenario was probably caught it through our study session slides when we were still discussing
It actually does
applicability.
apply because it's ownership.
Oh, it's ownership, there you go. Thank you, Kathy. Good catch.
For sale unit.
That's why she's here, guys.
Yeah, for sale units. So in lieu fee applies for all of those items, or for all ownership projects. Yeah.
Like I said.
Okay, any other persons wishing to provide public input? All right, let's get into some of these things. Let's talk about income levels, I think, first.
This slide up here shows how one could qualify for an affordable housing unit. So each county has affordable area median income. The area median income for Los Angeles County is $98,200. And when the state talks about the provision of affordable housing is broken down into categories, ranging from a moderate to low to very low and to extremely low. And each of those categories are based on a percentage of what the county's area median income is. So for example, very low would be 50% of 98,200. Am I getting this mixed
No,
up?
you're totally, your logic is correct.
Okay.
You're just wrong.
Okay.
No,
that's why you're here.
No, that's, not- yeah, and actually, we figured out what the discrepancy was between our numbers too, so we're good
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Here's the story. because no one will ever understand or get this, but if you actually look at the low-income number and compare it to the median, you'll see the low-income number is actually higher than the median on that chart when it's supposed to be 80%, but it isn't. What happens is, and this is a state law statute that, and the way the state law statute works is the very low income and the low income numbers that are applied for the counties throughout the state are set by HUD at the federal government. And what they're doing is they're stabilizing the Section 8 assistance program in high-cost areas. So the statutes all still say 50% of median and 80% of median, but this year, low income is 112% of the median. So you just got to accept it as true. So what happens
basically
is
what HUD says-
this chart is correct, but it isn't 50% or
over
80%. And it's only used, as Sherry mentioned, to qualify folks to live in the units. Then the rents, just to make things more confusing, are based on the actual percentages. So that's why the chart is confusing. But that's why I felt like I had to say it. Otherwise, people are going to start doing the math and think there was a typo.
Okay. I think that was a good clarification.
Why don't you stay close?
Yeah. And by the way, the public input portion, the public hearing is closed for the moment. We can reopen it if we need to, but let's continue.
Yeah. So as you can see from this chart, you see the categories of the income levels, and I think that's one of the key takeaways. Okay? Then we're going to go back quickly, and forgive me, but I don't want to take you through too many slides, to this slide. Okay? Okay.
Yes, let's talk about
So
Reno.
every city and county in the state of California has this requirement to have a housing element. And that housing element's purpose is to ensure that the city or county is meeting a target requirement of, so that when so that as development is occurring, right? The goal is to have some of your development not all be above market or market rate housing. The idea is to capture each city's fair share of these income categories, okay? Now, the state first, every housing cycle, the state says, releases a grand number and says the state of California needs to attain, to have this goal of affordable housing. And it's a production goal to meet existing and future need. And then each regional council of government takes those and divides them up based on their allocation from the state to the cities. So the state of California to SCAG, the Southern California Association of Government, is the one that passed through to the city of Monrovia. We had our RENA requirement, and this is by income level. And here you see the income levels for very low, low, moderate, and above moderate, and the total. Now, the city is not required to construct those units. Through the housing element policies and actions, we're required to show that we are not prohibiting development from occurring so that they don't occur, that we have available zoning classifications to accommodate housing densities that contribute to affordable housing. The state has said, their general number, I don't even know if it's still valid today, but a zoning designation of 30 or more units, it has a more realistic, there's more possibility that a unit would be affordable. Going through the housing element process, we also have to identify where in the city we believe development is going to occur. And for the city of Monrovia, for over 20 years before the Gold Line came to the city of Monrovia, the city of Monrovia had planned that there would be higher density housing around the city's station, and this is Station Square. Higher density housing was planned just south of Myrtle Avenue, our Old Town District. This is called Old Town Extension. And then other opportunities near, this is on the west end of the city that borders Arcadia. And so the cities had already had built in a general plan density of 54 units per acre in those areas to capture higher density projects. In order to tell the state this is where we think the housing is, we have to demonstrate that this is where the housing trends have been. And so over the last 15 years, we have seen a lot of development in Station Square. We've seen the Fifth and Huntington housing project go up. And then in the South Myrtle Avenue corridor, that's where we have the Avalon project. We are not allowed to pick sites that are here at City Hall, for example, where there's no realistic, possibility of having housing here. So with that table, that's a goal, okay? Over the years, we would always produce housing. Monrovia has always been a strong housing producer. But the state is really looking at cities and counties now to make sure that they're doing everything to produce affordable housing. The inclusionary housing ordinance is not rezoning anyone's property. So the zones and general plan land use designations that are in place today are remaining. Simply, what this ordinance is doing is there have been several projects that have been developed in Station Square, but a lot of those units are market rate units. This ordinance would allow any future development to capture a portion of those future projects to include affordable housing. Anyone who is interested in potentially developing their site with housing, our planning team would love to meet and discuss the different property characteristics and, with any property owner. We have a full-service planning division. We're open Monday through Thursday. Come to the counter. I can give you our contact information following the meeting. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Another line of potential questioning is presuming developers do come in and take advantage of the increased density possible in these areas. How does the city plan to deal with that increase in density?
Yeah, that's
Are our infrastructure and all of the other city services and parking and traffic and whatnot set up to handle that?
Yes.
Or will
So
it be?
that's part of the reason why the city is recommending, or excuse me, your staff is recommending, allowing the inclusionary, or enforcing the inclusionary housing first and foremost in the areas where the higher density has been planned. These areas have already experienced a lot of infrastructure improvements prior to the Gold Line to support the higher density developments. These are areas that are generally outside of having significant impacts to lower density areas. So there are some areas where there still are single-family homes in there, but for the majority, they're areas where we're not going to have significant impacts to neighborhood compatibility or any historic resources. And those thoughts were actually put into the general plan land use vision 30 years ago.
Okay. Were there other items that we missed?
There was a question about an enhanced infrastructure financing district.
Yes.
That word does not come up in the ordinance. I don't think it applies to the ordinance, but if Ms. Kathy Head wants to respond to that one.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's something the city would have to adopt, and it has an entire structure that the state has set up to do. It's a means of collecting. It's redevelopment 2.0, except it's not really. It's supposed to be a means to then create revenues where you can create infrastructure, but it would have nothing to do with this, and there's no affordability requirement associated with it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I guess
very
no
much.
would have done, but.
Well, no, that was useful context. We are focusing this discussion on the, consideration of the inclusionary housing ordinance and what we are going to say as a commission to the city council when they consider whether or not to adopt this or to change it in some way. Okay, given that, I think we've addressed most of the public comments. I would like to return to my fellow commissioners and open this up for some more dialogue.
Sure.
Awesome.
I do have a question. It's regarding, this is a tool, correct? We use this as a tool
That is correct.
to
As a
grow
plan.
housing, some being inclusionary. I think last time or sometime back, there was 2 million housing units or more in the state that we're short of. Then in January, we lost about 10,000 housing units. So the primary goal of this for the city council to adopt is a tool for you guys to get good planning and development. Am I accurate in that?
Yes.
I have some more questions. Are there any applications in progress that would be impacted by this ordinance? Like, how does that work?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah,
So
so-
if an application is already in progress and this ordinance
yeah.
gets passed, then what's the
Yeah,
deal?
so if an applicant has submitted an application that's been deemed complete, then they're not going to be affected by this ordinance.
Okay. But if the application is not in yet or whatever, and this ordinance becomes part of the municipal code, then they would be subject to that, right?
Correct.
Okay, so can we talk about the impact on housing prices and rent of this ordinance? What do we expect that to be? Will this drive up rents and, other, not affordable, but other rents and housing prices?
I mean,
And by how much?
this is a commonly asked question, is won't the developers just simply charge more rent or higher sales prices to accommodate this requirement? To which I always flippantly reply, because they stopped at a price that they could have gotten more than. I mean, I think that's a really important concept, is a developer establishes a threshold price they think they can achieve and a profit that they want to achieve. Sometimes they achieve more, sometimes they achieve less. That's the simplistic answer to this question is no, I don't believe it will impact what developers can get for property because we've set it up in a manner that is conservatively based and is not confiscatory and does not deprive a property owner of a fair and reasonable return on their investment. That being said, if you take it to a macroeconomic level, to the extent that you are creating less supply, if you set up a program that isn't viable, so you create less supply, then prices go up because the demand is higher than the supply. But I think that, and you're now surrounded by communities with inclusionary housing, so it's not like, they can just go anywhere to do their development. So as long as you have a program that's reasonable and has been backed up, I don't think it will affect it.
I think that's good to know. Given all of the ups and downs we've especially seen in the economic markets very recently, one question that's in my mind is, how have cities with inclusionary housing ordinances fared during the last few or couple economic downturns, say like in 2008, 2009, like that time frame?
Super good question. I helped Claremont write their inclusionary housing ordinance right before the Great Recession. So 2007, we adopted, we were right on the top of it. And so what happened is the whole market crashed. So nothing was developed. It wasn't because there was inclusionary, it was because there was nothing. And so in 2012, Claremont went back and amended their ordinance to reflect the then current economic climate. And then from 2012 to 2021, it's been a very successful program. It was all based, their program until 2021 was all ownership. It didn't have a rental component. There's reasons for that. The state didn't allow rental inclusionary until 2017, after the Palmer decision in 2009. So that was the reason. So in 2020, they came back and added rental in. But their ordinance has been very much ownership-based. So that one is one in your general vicinity, not particularly your market area, but your general vicinity, that just recognized the situation. Other communities that I work in left their inclusionary in place as it sat and just recognized that development wasn't going to happen.
So, again, hypothetically, if we were to enter a recessionary period, would as we're recovering out of that, would a place with inclusionary housing have a slower recovery?
So what I did this a number of years ago, because this is a good question that comes up a lot, is I looked at cities 10 years before they adopted inclusionary and 10 years after. I looked at 4 cities and looked at 10 years before and after. They went up, they went down. There was no discernible pattern to when the inclusionary was adopted and what happened to the supply and demand. It's one factor, but interest rates and marketability, et cetera, play a much more significant role than a well-structured ordinance. That being said, and as David said as well, in the current high interest rate environment that we're in and the sort of uncertain times that we're in, it may be a while before you see development of any kind.
Yeah.
Should I just stand here?
I think that was probably the end of my economic focused questions. Any other? So just probably for city staff, have we considered what alternatives to inclusionary housing that also have the goal of increasing affordable housing have we pursued? You mentioned a couple of them.
Yeah, so our team over the last 3 years, we've done some really targeted municipal code amendments. The Planning Commission just recently looked at the ADU ordinance update that allows for a lot more ADUs now. That ordinance is now in effect. A couple of years back, we reduced the unit size requirement. The city had a larger unit size, so by lowering that unit size, the goal was that more units could be produced on site if they met the density requirement in the general plan. The thought is that smaller units are cheaper to build. Last year, the city removed its conditional use permit requirement for multifamily housing. That took out any type of uncertainty in processing a multifamily development. It also reduced the time for approval and the cost, the application cost. With that, the staff also presented, and the Planning Commission looked at and council approved, objective design standards, and those took out also all the subjectivity and design review, making projects zoning code easy to follow and easy to implement. There are other things that are in our work plan that are all included in the housing plan that your planning division is working very hard on trying to get out the door. So more tools. This is not the last tool. There are more that will be forthcoming.
Okay. A couple more specifics. What happens when someone who's living in one of these units and qualified according to the income limits then starts making more money and doesn't qualify anymore? I'm sorry to make you get back up.
No, it's okay. I'm not far. Okay, so on ownership housing, it doesn't matter. So when they move in, they could win the lottery the next day, and they're still qualified to live in the unit until they choose to sell it, and then they have to sell it at an affordable price. On rental, then you'll set this up in your procedures when you do it. There are a variety of ways to do it. The most straightforward way to do it is when somebody becomes over income, then they either have to stay and pay the market rent, or they have to move, and you have to then have so they live in that unit, the next available unit of that type that comes up becomes the affordable unit. So rental unit, people qualify and requalify, and as Sherry was mentioning, the monitoring. On ownership, you just want to make sure they live in the unit.
Okay. So you triggered my thought. In another element of this ordinance says that the affordable units need to be similar to the market price units, but they could be slightly different size. They could have different finishes. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are we kind of setting up a two-class?
Well, go ahead, David.
So, not really. From the outside, they're absolutely going to look exactly the same. Where the difference is just to kind of accommodate the higher cost of providing that affordable unit. So, in the case of, let's say, someone builds a luxury apartment, they have top-end appliances, Sub-Zeros in there. For the affordable units, they're not going to be able to afford to do a $10,000 stove and oven. Instead, they're going to do something a little bit cheaper, like an LG or Samsung or something like that. So that's where those different materials come in. They may do carpet instead of tile flooring. But from the outside and the way the ordinance is designed is this unit will look like any other unit. So we're not kind of ostracizing the people that live in those units.
And I can add that they'll also have full access to all the property amenities as well.
And how about, what's the expected cost, like the administrative burden to the city of running this program? And, how do we?
That's under evaluation.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, given that, I think we're ready to move on to a motion.
I move to approve Planning Commission Resolution Number 2025-001.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Austin.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Scheffler.
Yes.
Sheaf.
Yes.
Chair Stahira.
Yes. All right, that motion carries. Do we need appeal language here?
No, so the next stop for this ordinance will be the city council, May 20th. And I do just want to thank, a lot of time when the entire planning division has been involved with this we've spent many hours with David Blumenthal and Kathy Head. Thank goodness for Kathy Head. She is the expert of every inclusionary housing ordinance in California. And I really, want to say thank you to my team for everyone has touched this. So thank you.
Yeah, this is a very complex topic, and I can see a lot of work went into it. I appreciate all your work, all your explanations, all your communication. And I also want to thank the members of the public who came and spoke and weighed in. Your input is valued as well. Okay, with that, I think we can move on to administrative reports, which we have none of. So next up, unless you need a drink of water, Sherry is the Community Development Director report.
All right, thank you. Just looking for my agenda here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here we go. So just two updates, really. The first big update is the Monrovia Area Partnership. The annual neighborhood conference is coming up. It's just 2 weeks away. I have put flyers in front of each of the commission. We have extra flyers here if anyone's interested in picking one up before they go. This is a wonderful event for the community. A lot of relevant, germane topics regarding fire safety, how to get an ADU application through the city's planning and building process. I really urge everyone to participate. There may be some tree giveaways, some native tree giveaways. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. And with respect to development updates, we have several that are still moving through the process. We made a decision to re-notice the 347 Highland project. So that one is going through another 30-day review, the State Clearinghouse. I do anticipate it will be some time before that comes to the commission. Staff will be giving you an update. So we'll give you a good, it will be coming, so start reading. So with that, that concludes all my reports. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Sherry?
Just want to comment on all the work for the last year on this city staff. Our council colleagues put the effort in. I think it was well done. And I think it's a good tool. And we need to provide you with tools, to provide people with tools and options, and appreciate it.
Any other reports?
I'd like to offer my thanks as well. It's been a tremendous amount of work you've done, and you've done it really well, so thank you.
Commissioner Scheffler?
I've got a question for Sherry and possibly John. 2 years ago, I don't know who was going to take it on. Evergreen, the project on Evergreen to the west of Primrose. A slew of people came in. They were all concerned about selling the housing for the project that was going through there. They went through and they took out half of the housing, I want to say. There's one house still left, and people live in it. I thought that was all taken care of at that point. And again, it's been 2 years or plus, possibly,
Yeah. So that project is the Arroyo at Monrovia Station project.
right?
That project has had some financing issues, and that's also, the property is also owned by there's a partnership as part of the developer, and they are working to assemble and get that project off the ground. They're currently entitled. They've been applying for yearly extensions to keep their entitlements alive. They have one more year of I think they have one more year. I think they have through March of 2027 on that project. So if they don't build it, but our team is working closely with the developer to try to see what we can do to keep it up. There have been, over the years, some property maintenance issues. If anyone sees any property maintenance issues, call us and we can take care of that.
No, my question was, I thought everything was already taken care of. In other words, there were people in here that were afraid to have children. They were concerned, they didn't know if they were coming or going, and they indicated that everything was taken care of at that point.
Yeah. So that one remaining house is a rental house. But unfortunately, the city has very little ability to do anything to force the development, right? We're doing our best to support the developer, so the end goal is development.
Thank you.
Any other reports or questions? I'll just make a comment about the MAP conference. I've been to the MAP conference for the last a few years. It's a great opportunity to learn about the city and learn about some interesting topics. There, it's always fun and good chance to rub elbows with your fellow community members too. So, highly recommend people check that out. And there's free food too, so that's a bonus. All right. Given that, I think we have exhausted our agenda for this evening. Hopefully not ourselves. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for May 14th of 2025, and this meeting is now adjourned at 9:23 p.m. Thank you.